In a bold move that underscores his administration's ongoing focus on immigration policy, former President Donald Trump has called for the Department of Homeland Security (DHS) to expand its workforce by at least 20,000 officers dedicated to enforcing deportation measures. Announced on May 10, 2025, this directive aims to incentivize undocumented immigrants to voluntarily leave the United States, a strategy Trump has characterized as making the process as easy as possible for those wishing to depart. In a video announcement, Trump detailed a plan that includes funding for flights for undocumented individuals who opt for voluntary departure alongside an exit bonus to further encourage compliance. However, the order did not clarify how the substantial increase in DHS staffing would be financed. Currently, Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE), the branch primarily tasked with managing illegal immigration, employs over 21,000 personnel, including approximately 600 deportation officers. The announcement comes amid a broader push from the Trump administration to explore various avenues aimed at compelling undocumented immigrants to leave the U.S. Earlier this week, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem revealed a $1,000 bonus and paid travel for individuals who voluntarily exit the country. Trump's approach has included urging local and state law enforcement agencies as well as the National Guard to assist in border enforcement operations. This call for increased manpower arrives at a time when some of Trump's proposed deportation methods have faced judicial scrutiny. Notably, federal judges have recently ruled against the use of the 18th-century Alien Enemies Act, which Trump sought to invoke for the deportation of Venezuelan migrants accused of gang activity. Such legal challenges reflect the contentious environment surrounding immigration reform during Trump's administration. Dubbed Project Homecoming, Trump's initiative emphasizes the potential consequences for those who remain in the country unlawfully. He stated illegal aliens who stay in America face punishments including significant jail time, enormous financial penalties, confiscation of all property, garnishment of all wages, imprisonment, and sudden deportation in a place and manner solely of our discretion. As the political landscape continues to shift, Trump's aggressive immigration agenda has sparked renewed debate about the effectiveness and morality of such tactics. Critics argue that these measures could exacerbate tensions within immigrant communities and heighten fears among those who may consider self-deportation. Looking ahead, the impact of Trump's directives on both immigration policy and broader societal attitudes towards undocumented immigrants remains to be seen. As the administration pushes forward with its enforcement strategies, the response from local communities, civil rights organizations, and the judicial system will likely play a crucial role in shaping the future of immigration in the United States. With ongoing discussions about the balance between national security and humanitarian considerations, the coming months will be pivotal in determining the course of Trump's immigration reforms and their long-term implications for American society. In a dramatic turn of events, President Donald Trump announced a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, citing U.S. mediation as the catalyst for ending a four-day military confrontation that escalated tensions between the two nuclear-armed nations. The announcement, made via Trump's Truth Social platform, came after intense negotiations, with Trump stating, "After a long night of talks mediated by the United States, I am pleased to announce that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire." His remarks were met with a mix of relief and skepticism, as reports of continued violence emerged just hours after the agreement. The backdrop to this ceasefire is a long-standing conflict that has seen India and Pakistan engage in frequent military skirmishes, particularly over the disputed territory of Kashmir. The recent flare-up was sparked by a terrorist attack in Kashmir that India attributes to Pakistan. In retaliation, both sides had launched drone and missile strikes, leading to unprecedented levels of military engagement. Reports indicated that drones were used extensively for the first time in a large-scale conflict between the two countries, marking a significant evolution in their military strategies. Despite the ceasefire announcement, blasts and artillery fire were reported in Kashmir shortly thereafter, suggesting that not all parties were fully committed to upholding the agreement. Indian officials accused Pakistan of violating the ceasefire. while Pakistani authorities claimed they were adhering to the terms but faced provocations from India. This back and forth highlights the fragility of the ceasefire and the complex dynamics at play. Secretary of State Marco Rubio played a pivotal role in the negotiations, emphasizing the necessity for de-escalation in calls with both nations' leaders. In a noteworthy statement, Rubio said, "I am pleased to announce the governments of India and Pakistan have agreed to an immediate ceasefire and to start talks on a broad set of issues at a neutral site." The U.S. administration's involvement was critical, with Vice President J.D. Vance also engaging with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in efforts to broker peace. However, the Indian government's narrative downplayed U.S. involvement, suggesting that the ceasefire was negotiated directly between India and Pakistan. As the dust settles on the initial hostilities, reactions from around the globe have been cautiously optimistic. Leaders from various countries welcomed the ceasefire, urging both nations to sustain the peace. The situation remains tenuous, with the potential for future escalations still looming, particularly given ongoing regional tensions and the history of conflict rooted in Kashmir. The coming days will be crucial as both India and Pakistan navigate the aftermath of this ceasefire. With their military capabilities in full view and public sentiment on both sides likely to influence future interactions, the international community will be watching closely to see if this ceasefire can lead to any substantive peace talks or if it is merely a temporary pause in a long-standing conflict. In the broader context, Trump's intervention has led to a wave of support from his political base, who are now dubbing him the peace president. As the geopolitical landscape shifts, the implications of U.S. involvement in South Asian conflicts could redefine international relations in the region. The focus now turns to whether this ceasefire can stabilize tensions and pave the way for a lasting resolution to the enduring conflict between India and Pakistan. In an unexpected turn of events, former President Donald Trump is making headlines once again, not just for his ongoing influence in the Republican Party but for a series of legal and political maneuvers that could significantly impact the landscape of U.S. governance. As the midterm elections loom, Trump appears to be fixated on reshaping the political arena to his advantage. Recent developments indicate that his administration's ambitious plans to downsize the federal government have hit a significant roadblock, while other political currents are also at play. A federal judge in California has temporarily blocked Trump's efforts to reduce personnel and reorganize operations across 21 federal departments and agencies. This ruling, delivered by Judge Susan Ilston, underscores the complexities of executive power in the context of large-scale governmental restructuring. The president has the authority to seek changes to executive branch agencies, but he must do so in lawful ways, Ilston stated, emphasizing the need for cooperation with Congress for such sweeping reforms. The implications of this ruling are profound. The Trump administration's push for the Department of Government Efficiency's workforce optimization initiative has now been halted, affecting key departments including housing and urban development and transportation. Critics argue that the administration's attempts to reorganize the federal government have resulted in chaos and have compromised essential services. The Trump administration's unlawful attempt to reorganize the federal government has thrown agencies into chaos, disrupting critical services provided across our nation, responded a coalition of nonprofits, unions, and local governments. As this legal battle unfolds, Trump remains preoccupied with the upcoming midterm elections. His actions suggest a strategic focus on consolidating his influence over the party and preparing for a possible resurgence in 2024. Political analysts note that this dual focus on election strategy and governmental restructuring could shape the Republican platform significantly. Trump's continued engagement with his base and the broader electorate is evident. He has not only been vocal about his political aspirations but has also indicated a desire to exert control over the party's direction. The landscape is further complicated by broader societal factors, including the recent appointment of a new pope who hails from the United States. This significant event raises questions about potential shifts in American politics and how religious influences might interact with existing political dynamics. As Congressman Brendan Boyle noted, the intersection of religion and politics could lead to new dialogues, particularly on issues where the church and the Trump administration have differing views. Meanwhile, as the administration grapples with the legal setbacks regarding its workforce initiatives, Trump's legal team has already filed an appeal against the judge's ruling, signaling a readiness for prolonged litigation. The court is set to hear further arguments on May 22, a date that could prove pivotal in determining the fate of Trump's ambitious plans for federal restructuring. In conclusion, the unfolding political drama surrounding Trump encapsulates a broader narrative of power governance and electoral strategy. With the midterms approaching, the administration's ability to navigate these legal challenges while maintaining its political momentum will be crucial. As the dynamics of U.S. politics continue to evolve, all eyes will be on how these intersecting issues will shape the future of both the Republican Party and the federal government. In a pivotal moment for global trade, high-level economic talks between the United States and China commenced in Geneva this weekend, marking the first such discussions since former President Donald Trump escalated tariffs on Chinese imports to an unprecedented 145%. As both nations navigate the turbulent waters of a trade war that has fundamentally altered their economic landscapes, the outcome of these negotiations could have far-reaching consequences not just for the two superpowers but for the entire global economy. The stakes could not be higher as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent leads the American delegation aiming to address the tariffs that have stifled trade and sent ripples through markets worldwide. On the Chinese side, He Lifeng, the Vice Premier for Economic Policy, heads the discussions. While the atmosphere is laden with tension, the mere fact that these two economic titans are at the negotiating table offers a glimmer of hope for a de-escalation of their ongoing conflict. However, analysts caution that expectations for a significant breakthrough are low as both sides grapple with a history of mistrust and unresolved grievances. The tariff battle has wreaked havoc on supply chains, forcing businesses to either absorb increased costs or pass them on to consumers. Recent data indicates that U.S. imports from China plummeted by 21% in April, highlighting the tangible impact of the levies. Both the U.S. and China have strong economic and financial interests in de-escalating their trade hostilities, noted Ishwar Prasad, a former director at the International Monetary Fund. Yet he also emphasized that a lasting resolution remains elusive. President Trump, who has framed the tariffs as necessary for America's economic resurgence, recently hinted at a willingness to lower tariffs, suggesting an 80% rate on Chinese imports. However, his administration has made it clear that any reductions will be contingent on corresponding moves from Beijing. "We have to make a great deal for America," Trump stated, reflecting the administration's ongoing commitment to a hardline stance. The geopolitical context of the talks cannot be overlooked. As Xi Jinping meets with Russian President Vladimir Putin, China is keenly aware of its positioning in the broader global landscape. The Chinese government has portrayed its participation in the negotiations as a response to U.S. overtures, with officials emphasizing that it was the United States that initiated the dialogue. This framing serves to maintain a semblance of strength while navigating the complexities of international trade relationships. Compounding the urgency of these discussions is the economic pressure facing both nations. Recent surveys indicate that U.S. consumers are beginning to feel the pinch from rising prices, a reality that has contributed to a decline in Trump's approval ratings regarding economic management. Inflation fears loom large, with over 60% of Americans expressing concerns that the administration's focus on tariffs is misguided. Meanwhile, Chinese exporters are struggling with excess inventory and dwindling demand, prompting calls for a pragmatic approach to negotiations. With the negotiations expected to continue into Sunday, experts suggest that the talks may primarily serve to outline positions rather than yield immediate solutions. Bert Hoffman, a professor at the East Asian Institute, predicts that the meetings will likely function as a preliminary exchange aimed at setting the stage for future discussions. "If things go well, an agenda will be set for future talks," he remarked. As the world watches closely, the implications of the Geneva talks extend beyond mere trade figures.
The potential for a prolonged economic conflict raises concerns about a slowdown in global growth and the destabilization of established supply chains.
The World Trade Organization has already warned that the ongoing division of the global economy could reduce global GDP by nearly 7% over the long term, disproportionately affecting the most vulnerable nations. In conclusion, the US-China negotiations represent a critical juncture for both countries and the international community at large. While the road ahead is fraught with challenges, the mere act of dialogue signifies a willingness to engage and potentially reshape a fraught economic relationship. As both sides navigate their respective domestic pressures and international posturing, the outcome of these talks will be closely scrutinized with far-reaching implications for global trade dynamics in the months and years to come. In a tumultuous time for the Pentagon, President Donald Trump has expressed a confident outlook regarding Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth despite reports indicating a chaotic environment within the Department of Defense. In a recent interview with The Atlantic, Trump revealed that he had a constructive conversation with Hegseth amid rising concerns about operational mismanagement and strategic leaks, asserting, "I think he's gonna get it together." The backdrop of this endorsement stems from a series of alarming incidents that have raised eyebrows within military and political circles alike. Reports surfaced indicating that Hegseth had created a second Signal chat group on his private phone ostensibly to discuss military operations against the Houthi rebels in Yemen. This chat, intended for sensitive discussions, inadvertently included the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, highlighting a severe lapse in operational security. The situation was further complicated by Hegseth's admission that he had also shared sensitive war plans within this group. Trump's administration has faced scrutiny over these developments, leading to a supportive yet cautious stance from the president. He addressed the situation by assuring that National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who was responsible for the chat's creation, is fine despite the negative fallout. Trump even humorously advised his staff, "Maybe don't use Signal, okay?" This lighthearted remark belies the seriousness of the breaches that have occurred under Hegseth's watch. In response to the leaks, Hegseth, a combat veteran, has been vocal about the challenges he faces, attributing the leaks to fired staffers aiming to undermine the Trump administration's agenda. "Those folks who are leaking are now attempting to leak and sabotage the president's agenda," he stated defiantly as he sought to regain control of the narrative. Internally, the focus on investigating leaks seems to have consumed Hegseth's time, an observation echoed by Colin Carroll, former Chief of Staff to the Deputy Secretary of Defense. Carroll noted that about half of Hegseth's day is now taken up by leak investigations, which he described as detrimental to both the Secretary's effectiveness and the broader objectives of the administration. He added, "It's a bad thing for America. It's a bad thing for the president's objectives," suggesting that urgent issues such as budgetary concerns are being overshadowed by internal strife. Hegseth's approach to addressing these challenges has included public appearances, often showcasing his interactions with military personnel. However, some critics argue that these efforts may not adequately address the pressing issues at hand. Carroll pointed out that priorities need to be weighed more effectively, particularly during critical periods like budget deadlines. As the situation develops, the Pentagon remains under the microscope, with Hegseth's leadership capabilities being questioned amid suggestions of a need for a more focused approach to governance. The president's continued support for Hegseth suggests a belief in his potential to rise above the current chaos, but the path forward remains uncertain. Observers will be keenly watching how Hegseth navigates the complexities of military leadership in the face of scrutiny and whether he can indeed get it together as Trump anticipates. The unfolding dynamics within the Defense Department may not only impact military operations but also set the tone for the administration's broader strategic objectives as it moves forward. In a significant diplomatic development, President Donald Trump announced a U.S.-mediated ceasefire agreement between India and Pakistan, a move that reflects his ambition to be recognized as a peacemaker on the global stage. This announcement comes at a time when international tensions are high, particularly with the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza. Trump's latest diplomatic efforts appear to be part of a larger strategy to solidify his legacy and perhaps fulfill his long-standing desire for a Nobel Peace Prize, a recognition he has publicly coveted. On May 10, 2025, Trump took to his social media platform Truth Social to declare, after a long night of talks mediated by the United States, "I am pleased to announce that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire." This statement marked a notable achievement in U.S. foreign policy, as the two nuclear-armed nations had been embroiled in escalating tensions following a terrorist attack in Kashmir. The ceasefire was reportedly facilitated by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance, who engaged with leaders from both countries in recent days. Rubio emphasized the importance of diplomacy, tweeting about the talks and commending the leaders for their willingness to engage peacefully. However, the announcement was quickly tempered by reports of ceasefire violations, highlighting the fragility of the agreement. Pakistan's foreign minister acknowledged the roles of Saudi Arabia and Turkey in brokering the deal, indicating a multifaceted diplomatic effort. This development in South Asia comes alongside another significant diplomatic initiative in Europe, where leaders from Ukraine and several European nations are set to announce an unconditional 30-day ceasefire backed by the U.S. and aimed at curtailing Russian aggression. As the president continues to navigate these complex international waters, analysts are questioning whether his peace-driven narrative can withstand scrutiny, particularly in light of ongoing conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine. The situation in Gaza remains dire, with Trump's administration facing criticism for its handling of humanitarian aid and the overall escalation of violence. Critics argue that while Trump seeks to position himself as a global peacemaker, his administration's actions often contradict this image, creating a dissonance that could hinder his diplomatic credibility. The broader implications of Trump's foreign policy strategies are becoming increasingly apparent as global markets react to these developments. Following the announcement of a ceasefire in South Asia, the U.S. stock market displayed signs of optimism, particularly in sectors tied to trade. The Federal Reserve held its interest rates steady amid concerns of inflation and economic stagnation, signaling a cautious approach to monetary policy amidst Trump's aggressive trade diplomacy. His administration recently finalized a trade agreement with the UK, reducing tariffs and fostering closer economic ties, further illustrating the interconnectedness of his domestic and foreign policy initiatives. Despite these diplomatic strides, Trump's motivations remain closely tied to his personal aspirations. His pursuit of a Nobel Peace Prize has been a recurring theme in his public discourse, often revealing a deeper desire for validation on the world stage. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton encapsulated this sentiment, suggesting that Trump's public life is centered on the greater glory of Donald Trump, highlighting the intertwining of personal ambition with international diplomacy. As the geopolitical landscape continues to evolve, the outcomes of Trump's diplomatic overtures remain uncertain. The fragile ceasefire in Kashmir and the precarious situation in Ukraine present both opportunities and challenges for the U.S. administration. Observers will be watching closely to see whether Trump can maintain momentum in these negotiations and ultimately achieve the peace he seeks, or if the complexities of international relations will thwart his ambitions. With tensions still simmering and the stakes increasingly high, the coming weeks will be critical in determining the trajectory of U.S. foreign policy under Trump's leadership.